Welcome to the first session on DeX. It's on behalf of Victor and the entire Samsung DeX team globally. I've been looking at this for a few years now. I wanted to welcome you and thank you for joining us. Really, the focus of this session will be how to optimize your app for DeX. But I thought it might be interesting to give you a little bit of backdrop in terms of why did we even bother taking this journey with DeX. So I wanted to give you a little bit of a historical backdrop, and then I'll turn it over to Victor, who's going to lead the rest of the session. So, but before we do that, Victor, we have some giveaway to give?
Yes, I have an announcement to make. So as you know, there's lots of quizzes, lots of giveaways going on at this conference. And so we decided that we'll join the pack and we'll have our own quiz. So we'll have a really short one because it's only 45 minutes that we have. Only 3 questions. But in order to answer those questions correctly, you really have to listen and look at the details. So at the end of the presentation, we'll basically do a web-based quiz where it's not only the accuracy of your response counts, it's also the speed. So the faster you click on the right question, the more chances you get to win a DeX station.
All right.
And it's right here.
Cool. So hopefully there'll be an incentive other than learning how to optimize the app for DeX. So I'm sure this happens in your organizations as well, sitting around, kind of brainstorming, thinking about what to do next. And we do that all the time at Samsung. And almost a little more than 3 years ago, we're just kind of sitting around, asking ourselves the similar questions that we had before. What else can we do? What do we do? What other user experience can we bring to our users? And literally, this picture that you see is drawn up by one of our UX engineers, like, hey, how about this? And that's what showed us. And we thought, usually when you're brainstorming, you're not supposed to criticize, but we're like, is that really possible? Do we have the technologies? But 3 years later, voila, we have DeX with us, and we introduced our first version of DeX 6 months ago with S8, and I'm super excited to talk about DeX and have Victor talk to you more about how to optimize your apps. Now, the question is, why do we even bother? It's been tried before. Do we really need another accessory for users to have to buy and use it? When we look at the way things are progressing in our mobile environment and our mobile lives, other than some of the sort of more professional work or hardcore gaming, most of things can be done with our mobile phones. Rarely that we have the need to turn to our desktop environment. And what's surprising is that by projection, about in 2021, a little less than 90 million PC units will be shipped. But what's astounding is that that's only 50% of units sold in 2010. So just 7 years ago, if you look at the volume of units being shipped in PC environment, it's astounding that the shift has already occurred, more than 10 years ago. And I'm sure you guys have laptops and PCs at home, but how often do you really turn it on and do what you need to do on a daily basis? And I think most of the time we turn to our mobile phones and mobile devices. And of course, for Samsung, consumer as well as B2B market, our enterprise market is also embracing mobile-first strategies. So I think from that perspective, we thought DeX has a very unique proposition and value to bring to not only our consumers, but as well as B2B customers. So why Samsung DeX? It's more than a screen mirroring. We've had that screen mirroring technology for quite some time. And there are more apps every day. We're seeing more apps that are optimized for DeX. that really contribute to your productivity level on a daily basis. And it really comes out of your phone, the phone that you love, the phone that you love to use. And there's nothing else that you need to prepare other than having the docking station, that what we call DeX station. So I think Samsung DeX is a very compelling story for not only people on the go, but as well as B2B customers who have a unique need for having to be really mobile, but also having to be able to tap into their back-end systems and their applications running in their virtual environment. Now, when we introduced DeX 6 months ago with S8, we really focused on productivity and creativity, the content creation aspect. So we partner with Citrix, VMware, Adobe, Microsoft, to name just a few. And they really helped us to launch this with a very clear goal of bringing productivity to our mobile environment. And when we released the second, sort of almost like second wave of that with Note 8, where we focused was more collaboration and also entertainment aspect. And what was really surprising when we first released DeX, we thought it really was a productivity tool. But it turns out most of consumers, the feedback that we got was that, hey, this is cool. I can just put it in a docking station. I can watch my movie in a bigger screen, and then I can play games, for example, on a bigger screen with a full mouse control and a keyboard control. So I thought it was interesting that as we kind of take this journey, what we thought was the sort of sweet spot, that was really not what the feedback that we got. Now, as we prepare the next flagship in 2018, we're looking at more, of course, furthering what we have been doing with productivity and entertainment, but also providing a unique DeX service that we can provide to our customers. We think the Samsung DeX really is not just a product or feature. It's actually part of a service that we want to provide our users with. I'm super excited to make a sort of quick announcement on Final Fantasy. It's supporting not only Vulkan API for the performance gain, but also is fully optimized for Samsung DeX. And I think we have a table up on the third floor where you can actually see some of these games being played out in DeX mode. And I believe Final Fantasy optimized for DeX is coming out in a couple of months. So look forward to that. Ready to be DeXers? I think one of the probably compelling story about DeX is that there's nothing proprietary about DeX. You might think, oh, gee, probably Samsung has some proprietary API that I have to program to. The answer is resounding no. Right? If you build your app the way you do it using Android development principle, then it'll be running in DeX without any additional effort from the development side. I think the power of DeX to me is that it gives that decision to you, to the developers. Should I have my app run optimized in mobile form factor, or do I have a reason to look at bigger screen where my users, my audience, will be benefiting from? So that decision is up to you, right? So if you feel that, hey, there will be a reason to support multi-windows, hey, DeX is right there for you to utilize that. Mouse control, do I need it? Do my users benefit from that? If the answer is yes, I think DeX is obviously one of the options that you can exercise. So that power belongs to you. We're not mandating anything. And then hopefully that will encourage you to look at DeX a little closely and see what it means to be DeX optimizing or DeX enabling your app. Kind of staying with the game sort of metaphor. If you want to do nothing, that's okay. It'll still run in DeX mode, maybe as a phone form factor, not as a fully optimized for bigger screen. But if you support multi-window, that's another level of capability that you can bring to your customers, your users. And of course, if you go all the way to keyboard and mouse support and a runtime configuration change where going in and out of DeX mode, your app is seamlessly connecting to different mode, then of course you'll be fully optimizing. So all that, Victor is going to dive into it, and I think I'm going to turn it over to Victor now.
Thank you, Jed. My role in Samsung is I'm a developer evangelist. So I'm basically connecting developers worldwide to our products that have SDKs and APIs. I'm a software developer myself, and just to get a sense of the audience, can you please show me who actually have built an Android app and went through all the challenges? And oh, excellent! So we have developers in the audience. Because we are going to talk code. Well, maybe at this point, some of you sitting like, that sounds too good to be true, everything that Jack just said. And that's OK, because as they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words, but a good demo is worth 1,000 pictures, right? So why don't we jump right into a demo? Fortunately, I don't have to rewire and switch anything on my setup, because we run the whole presentation from my work Galaxy S8 Plus. Occasionally, you see some instant messages popping up. That's because it's my work phone. And all I have to do to get you to the DeX experience is to press Escape button and minimize my PowerPoint. And here we are. We are in DeX. OK, so since you are all developers here, let's do a bit of a development experience on DeX. And usually, when we start working on our code, we put some ambient music. But how about we'll put some ambient video? OK? These days, I was thinking about what kind of video can we put on the screen. These days, pretty much every subject is controversial, except for one. And I'm sure you'll agree with me. Kittens. Everybody likes kittens, right? They're, they're pretty politically neutral. So let's make them play here for a bit. And we can open our programming tool. That's called AIDE, Android Integrated Development Environment. Developed by our partners in Germany. And this is basically a full-featured Android development environment that allows you to work on your code on this large screen, build and deploy your app right on the same device. Isn't that cool? You no longer have to connect your notebook to the device. And of course, the reason I put kittens on the screen is not just to make it cute, but perhaps to show you, this is our first tip to you. You know how when you play video on a mobile device, the minute you overlap your video with another app, it stops playing? Well, not so much on this screen, right? And why do you think it's happening this way? Well, that's because the developers who actually put together this app, they chose not to implement the pausing on an on-pause callback method. They decided, well, in a desktop mode, it is possible that there'll be multiple windows overlapping each other, but we probably shouldn't stop the video playback. So that's one of the tips how you can optimize your apps for the desktop environment. And of course, we don't have too much time in this session to give you the entire recipe book, but that's why we have our DeX developer experience group. We have on the third floor. We have I think 6 engineers that could walk you in details through this app that I'm going to present. Plus, we have a Stream Code 101 on the second floor. It's actually just out of this door. And that's where you can actually sit down and build your own app and optimize it for DeX. So here, we'll just do a few things. OK, let's put the kittens on the background, because they're a bit distracting. So what we're going to do here let's just build this up and open it, and I'll walk you through some of the interesting features. Yeah, install. See, isn't it really cool? You know, it's kind of always been a dream to develop and deploy on the same mobile device. We just didn't have the means of doing it. Well, here it is. So what it is, it's a really simple notepad. We have secured the content with some of the Knox APIs, but let's not focus on that. I just want to show you what kind of capabilities you are getting out of box and what kind of capabilities you can add taking into consideration the desktop environment. So you may be happy to know that out of box, we support a lot of familiar keyboard shortcuts. Let's do Control-A, Control-C, Control-V, Control-V. So all that comes pretty much for free. This is edit text view that I just included to my layout, and I didn't do anything special about it. How cool is it? So when you start thinking about optimizing your app for the desktop environment, start thinking about interaction with the keyboard, because no longer it'll be just the gestures with the fingers that people are going to use to navigate your app, but they'll be using keyboard and a mouse. So keyboard comes with the luxury of shortcuts. And the cool thing about this is that you can actually add your own custom shortcuts. So I decided to add my own shortcut, Control plus, Control minus, just to zoom in, zoom out. And again, as Jack said, I didn't use any proprietary APIs for that. All you have to know is the URL for the developer guide at android.developer.com, developer.android.com. Yeah, and that's where all your recipes are. Another thing is that we actually support a lot of out-of-box mouse related functionalities. So all the lower menu items on this pop-up menu, they're actually standard. As you can see, undo, paste, copy, all of them, they come standard. But the top two, they actually are custom. So I can show you, for example, just quickly show you the immersive mode. So this is my maximized app, but you can put it in so-called immersive mode. Yeah, like this, to allocate the entire screen space. And this is actually pretty popular with the game developers, right? You no longer distracted with anything else. And there's a couple of different variations of this mode, sticky, non-sticky, and all that is pretty much standard Android core API. Another thing that's a bit new in a desktop environment, and again, you may consider optimizing your app for that, is the drag and drop. Let's do some simple drag and drop. So here's our session here. Let's just go ahead and select the content, the abstract. It's a bit difficult to navigate a few feet away. And drop it here. See? So that also supported right out of the box. You don't have to write a single line of code to enable that. Let me do Ctrl-Z. And just as with custom keyboard shortcuts and custom pop-up menus, you can customize your drag and drop as well. And let me show you how it works, and then I'll show you a little bit of code. So this is my files, and I have some textual file. All I have to do is to grab it, drop it here. So as you can see, I just inserted a textual content from that file. If you look at the code to see how it's been implemented, it's really straightforward. So this is my main activity and the only activity. Yeah, and that's my on-drug listener. So basically, I need to listen to the drop event, and then I just need to inspect the item that has been dropped. And I can look at the MIME type of the item, and if it's a text plain, I assume that, yeah, it's probably a textual file. So why don't I just copy that whole text and append it to my view, edit text view. As you can see, just a few lines of code, and you have your drag and drop. How cool is that? And again, this actual application is available at our DeX developer zone on the 3rd floor. So you can look at all the shortcuts and all these drag and drops and everything that this application supports. Perhaps some of you will say, well, I kind of like working in Android Studio. Maybe learning new integrated development environment is a bit too much for me. Why can't I use Android Studio? Well, maybe they'll make an Android version of Android Studio in the future, but in the meantime, we can use our virtual desktop to access our Windows computer remotely, and you can't even say it's Android running here, right? It's a Windows host, and right here I have the same app that in my Android Studio.
Victor, you're currently using what, Citrix?
Yeah, we have a number of partners who actually implemented virtual desktop environment that works beautifully with DeX. This is from Citrix. We also have solution from Amazon and VMware. Okay. And by the way, today at 5 o'clock, we'll be having a panel discussion where VMware will be present. Yep. So welcome to attend. Obviously, you won't be able to deploy the APK that you build here because it's somewhere out there, but you can use your Git account, for example, to synchronize between two hosts, right? So should be simple. Okay, so that's maybe all we can afford in terms of the demo here. Again, there's plenty of opportunities on our different booths. So please come and visit us on the 3rd floor and over here on the 2nd floor. But we have a few other topics to cover, and let's jump back to our presentation. So I hope by this time you are not as skeptical as our friend Android here. So as Jack said, basically stick to the best programming practices on Android. And one of those practices that is extremely important is handling runtime configuration changes. And DeX, when you use DeX, we're actually getting a few new configuration changes that we need to account for. Specifically, every time you plug in, pop out your mobile device from the DeX station, you get a configuration change. And every time when you resize, maximize, and restore your window, you get a configuration change. And you know what happens. You're all developers, right? You know what happens during configuration change. The activity gets basically killed and restarted. So you really have to think about how to preserve the app state and provide a smooth user experience. And of course, there's best practices. We all know how to do it. Except maybe we should mention a couple of new resource qualifiers. I'm sure you're all using Android resources, alternate layouts, alternate drawables, alternate text for different configurations. So with DeX, you'll have desk qualifier, which is just kind of works as a suffix in your resource folder. And the density will be MDPI. Okay, so those of you who think about participating in quiz, you may want to take particular attention at this. All right. So, but it's not always that you want to be able to, you want to let Android to kill your activity and restart it. Sometimes it's just too costly to restore, what your activity has been doing. Maybe, you don't want to reestablish network connections. Maybe there's a lot of usually performance reasons. So you may choose to keep the activity alive. And again, from the Android developer guide, we know that this is not a preferred way of handling configuration changes. But if you choose to do that, you have all the tools to do that, to implement that. You have to focus on two parts: manifest. This is where you basically tell Android that don't bother switching my config, I'll do it myself. And you have to implement some code to do that in a callback method. So this is how you do it in a manifest. As you can see, there's a UI mode. So all these configuration changes, they happen to your app in desktop mode. Because guess what's happening when you start resizing it? It may change layout from portrait to landscape to some kind of square layout. So if you want to handle all possible configuration changes in DeX mode, then this would be probably a complete recipe book. And so this is on configuration change callback. This is where you actually do something that you need to do in your activity to actually reflect the configuration that is now current. Another question that we get asked frequently, how do I detect that I'm actually in a DeX mode? Remember, on pause. You may choose to pause your app when it plays in mobile mode, but you may choose to continue your execution logic when you're in a DeX mode. So how do you detect the DeX mode? There's a number of different ways. And again, you can learn all of them at our DeX developer zone on the 3rd floor. But this is just one of them. This is this relies on a broadcast. So you can register a broadcast receiver. And as you can see, those labels that we use for the intent filter, they actually have Samsung, some of the Samsung entries. And that's because we currently don't have such a broadcast supported by the core Android API. So you can, for the interim, you can use this broadcast receiver. Once it becomes available as part of the core API, then you can switch over. And again, once you get your broadcast, then you can analyze it, to understand what actually happened, plug in, plug out, and do your logic. Another question that we get asked frequently, is there any way to control the size of the application, the launch dimensions of the window size, maybe restrict the maximum dimensions? Yes, again, these are some of our, if you say, proprietary labels, just because, again, this functionality is not currently supported by the core API. So with these features, you may actually enhance the user experience on Samsung devices in desktop mode. Everything else is, there's pretty much just standard Android practices. Another question that comes to mind, how do I debug my app? Let's say that you're using conventional setup. You have your notebook, you have your USB cable that you use to deploy your APK to a mobile device. Well, but your mobile device is now in a DeX station, and DeX station is not connected to your desktop or notebook computer. So it almost means like you have to pop it out, connect to the USB cable, deploy your APK, disconnect, put it back to the DeX station, and that sounds like a lot of headache. Well, by using standard feature of Android Debug Bridge, you can actually deploy your APK over Ethernet or Wi-Fi. And by the way, we do have Ethernet port in the DeX station. So it works beautifully. You don't have to unplug your mobile device anymore. It just sits comfortably in the DeX station. And that's pretty much all the time we can spend giving you some of the pointers when it comes to optimizing your app for desktop environment. There's tons of resources. And as I mentioned, developer.android.com is your first reference for the best Android practices that you basically need to respect, especially when your app works in a desktop environment. Because one of the things you need to remember, you need to provide a true desktop experience rather than deploying a mobile app to a large screen. These are totally different principles. And another resource that I highly recommend, it's actually been written by my colleagues in Vancouver. I'm from Vancouver, British Columbia. A beautiful developer guide that gives you some of those code snippets and examples, and specifically talks about the most important parts of optimizing your app for the desktop environment. And again, today we're going to have a panel at 5 p.m. Jack and I will be there. Stream Code 101, again, just out of door on your right. And DeX Developer Zone is on the 3rd floor. We have our DeX evangelists there who would happily walk you through all these
Victor,
tips.
can you comment on the experience of Linux running on DeX?
Yeah, we actually, for those of you hardcore Linux developers and users, you'll be happy to see Ubuntu. I think in our example, we're using Ubuntu running on Note 8. Amazing experience. It's not some kind of like tailored, half or crooked Ubuntu version. It's the one that you would use on your desktop computer. You wouldn't feel a difference.
It's not commercialized yet. It's in trial, but you can basically pick any distribution you like. I think we're using Ubuntu as just an example, but you will have a full access to your Linux resources. Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm just going to ask you a question.
Sure.
For that Linux distro, does that run side by side with Android?
Yes. You can think of it as a sort of almost a virtual environment within DeX that gives you that.
If you think of all the processor power we have on Note 8, that wouldn't be surprising.
So please check it out. It's pretty interesting.
But our Q&A is coming right after this. Okay, so we promised you the giveaway, and let's just do that. It's real simple and it's real fun. And there's only 3 questions, and this is how it works. You will let me just close all the windows here.
We don't have a shortcut for.
There is shortcut, yeah. But I just like to play with those windows. Okay, guys. So this is how it works. We use Kahoot. Really nice place. So we have classic and team mode, so let's stick with the classic. So all you have to do is get your phones ready, go to kahoot.it and enter the game pin. And as you join in, you'll be appearing on this screen. No email is required. You can totally conceal your identities. "22 players.
All right, I'm in. Too.
Jack, I don't think you're qualified to get a DeX station. I'm sure as a VP you can have your without the quiz. Okay, let's spend 30 more seconds for the rest of you guys to register.
All right.
Okay.
No, it looks like pretty much
Yeah,
everyone.
I think we can 45. That's
All
a
right.
good number. That's a good number. Let's go ahead and start. No pressure, guys.
Oh, more.
3 questions about Samsung DeX. Are you ready? You'll see how to answer those questions. It's pretty intuitive.
I like some of the answers.
Okay. Yeah, strangely, no one answered the green one. Yeah, you guys are absolutely right. We built DeX to provide a desktop experience for mobile users. We are not that ambitious yet to replace all the computers in the world. Perhaps it's coming next year, or next session. Okay, so
All
David
right.
P. is our leader
Currently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's go for the next one. You're absolutely right, guys. So no mandatory efforts are required in terms of handling mouse events or keyboard events. You can use them to provide better user experience, but it's not mandatory. So the majority got it absolutely correctly. Let's see if David is still at the top.
Oh,
yeah.
All right.
Good job. But, we still have one more question to come. So don't get discouraged. And here it goes. MDPI, yeah, you're absolutely right. So desk is a write qualifier, but it's not a density qualifier. It's a UI mode qualifier. And
Wow.
David P.
All right,
is
David.
a lucky winner. David,
Where's
come on
David?
over on the stage.
All right.
We'll award you. Congratulations.
All right, good job.
Thank you. So guys, we are excellent at our time management. Look, we have whole 6 minutes for the Q&A. And
By the way, I was 47th place.
yeah, just all right. Speak up. You can use the mics, or you can just. It's a small audience.
So the AID thing you showed, does that require Ethernet or no?
AID, no, it actually, it's an app that runs locally on a mobile device. It helps if you have internet connectivity because you can use Git repositories remotely, but no, it's, thank you.
Gentleman back there.
So I noticed that you mentioned that there's no stock Android solution for setting the default window size and maximum size. There actually is if you look in for the manifest. It is a labeled default width, height, minimum width and height. So you can actually use stock Android solution.
We didn't find the maximum dimensions yet. So that,
The minimum and default maximum.
yeah.
Also, just another note to developers. Sorry. Sorry, I forgot where I was now. Another tip to developers: if you want to update your application to load the appropriate layout XML file depending on the new window size. You can set content view on create, or also set content view on configuration change. So that will load the appropriate XML files and image files for your new window size. Sorry.
Yeah, well, thank you for the tip.
Great. Yes.
Does DeX support Knox container?
The question was, does DeX
Like, if your device is in Knox
container mode? Very good question. We are actually working on that. We may be looking at different way of presenting the container-only mode within DeX. So that's coming up probably within the next 6 months or so. Yes?
So since you mentioned movie and entertainment, I'm just curious, does it work with protected content?
The question is with, so you're talking about digital rights?
Yeah.
Yeah.
DRM videos.
Right. So, there's really nothing that we are doing that's changing that. So, and if the content is playable within the mobile device, that's just being streamed out to the monitor. So, we're not doing anything, and we're not changing any encoding or decoding aspect of digital rights.
So the easy idea to keep in mind is a DeX environment is basically a different Android launcher with some kind of hardware that triggers that launcher. It's pretty much it.
But from protected content, this is still no monitor, so I want to apply more rules.
I think that's a good point. We do have to look at, and we continue to look at the security aspect, where there's protecting the digital rights, also making sure that the connection between the device to the docking station to the monitor is not compromised. So that's an additional layer of security that we are working on. That's a good point. Yes, sir.
The action of event in broadcast receiver, does it affect with Android Oreo because it has broadcast limitation? It is still work it because I saw in your example code you declare your broadcast receiver in Android manifest.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I understood the question. Could you repeat one more time?
The action in Android.app and .action.enter Knox desktop mode, it is still work in Android Oreo because it has broadcast limitation. Is it still working?
Maybe, after this, maybe we'll come down and talk to you. And just make sure that we
just
get the right
look at the
question.
code together.
Yeah. Thank you. So please stay after the Q&A.
Hey, sorry I'm late, but I have a question I don't think is covered. Using DeX, that you can get the entire Linux running. So my question is like, is there any plan to basically connecting Android using some of the you can build Linux app and then using Android app to go back and forth, or is it just something Linux Ubuntu just something for cool, showing for?
Sorry. Right. So let me just on the Linux side, you can think of it as being able to access Linux distribution within DeX, but it's a separate development environment. So it's you can almost think of it as a virtualized environment where you have direct interaction with Linux distro. So slightly different. But what you mentioned, obviously that's an interesting angle. So we'll probably take a look at it and see what that would mean for Samsung DeX.
Yeah, but for now, can you access the same, let's say, server? Let's say for Linux, I'm just hosting something. I do some calculation on Linux, and I host it somewhere, and then can my Android app pull that from, let's say, 127.0.0.1?
Not sure, but that's a really good point. Yeah.
Well, you can always do it through the cloud, right?
Yeah, but but two operating systems on the same device and pushing up to cloud and come. That doesn't seems like a lot.
Well, there's always security challenges that comes when it comes to that. But yeah.
Yeah, we'll definitely take a look at that. That's a very interesting point. Thank you. One last, can we? Yeah, go ahead.
Besides keyboard and mouse, what other HID class protocols do you support?
We use Clicker. Here's my Clicker receiver.
Game controllers, Wacom, stylus,
You know, I think the answer is yes. We haven't really done, for example, like if I connect another webcam to our USB port, it actually works. We haven't really thought about it, but it works. So those things, I think we can definitely take feedback from you guys, and if it doesn't work, then we definitely can address in either the firmware upgrade or on our software side. So it'll be interesting to see what other sort of use that our docking station has. Good point. Thank you. Time up? All right. If you have any more questions, you have my email, Victor's email. Please let us know. And again, if you run into any issues with Samsung DeX as you're doing development, please let us know. We'd love to hear from you. And 5 o'clock, if you can come to our panel session, that'd be great. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.